be said that the stories of the last days have suggested that we have to know that we know, and we have to know that we have the proper authority. And perhaps we could say that they've also suggested that what is present for us when we know that we know and we know that we have the proper authority is power, the power of creation, we might say. But there are three simple stories that are a reminder for us, something that we have to remember when we claim that we know, and we know that we have the proper authority. The first is that story about a student who'd been with a master for many years and went to them and said, "Master, we know that you can confer enlightenment and realization on us by your touch, but you keep us with you for some time. Why do you not give us that touch?" And the master said, "Let me tell you a story. There was a man who had a cooking pot that was encrusted after years and years of use with the crud that had been gathered there. So he took it to someone who he believed would be able to bring it back to its pristine state. And when the man took the cooking pot to this person, the person said, "Yes, come back this afternoon and I'll have it ready for you." And in the meantime, that person made a great fire and threw the cooking pot on the fire. And of course, with the great heat of what the fire gave, very soon all of the incrustations that were on the pot were cleaned, and all that was needed was a quick wipe, and the pot was brought back to its pristine state, you might say. But then there was a second man who also had a saucepan encrusted with crud, and he took it to another man who said to him, "Leave it with me for some time and I'll take care of it." And this second man, every day he took the pot and he chipped away at all the incrustations and he scrubbed it and he polished it. And after some time, it was brought back to a beautiful, natural state. But it is said, when the first man took his saucepan back to his house and tried to put it on the stove, it was so fragile, it just fell apart. But the second man was able to use his pot for many, many a year. So said the master, it is like that with the power and the force of love. Remember this. The second story is about a master a student came into his presence, who it was found was very arrogant and argumentative, and the master's head disciple made the remark to the master, "Master, I don't know what we're going to make of this one." And the master said nothing. But that very evening he said to his head disciple, it was a very hot evening, so he said, "Let's go for a walk in the town." So the master and his head disciple walked down the street of the town, and very soon they came to a house where there was a man sitting out on his veranda. Now it was known that this man was a very famous and learned and erudite professor, but he liked to tipple a little bit each evening. So he was sitting on his veranda, obviously after drinking quite a lot in the evening times, and as they passed they greeted him, but he just mumbled seemingly incoherently. But the master said to his head disciple, "Now you see, this is a very good time for you to debate with this professor now when he's in this state." And so the master called out, "Professor, professor, my student would like to debate with you." And immediately the professor came out of his drunken state and said, "Yeah, where is he? Where is he? I'll debate with him. Where is he?" But by this time, the disciple had run off down the road. And when the master caught up with the student, he said, "Well, now you see, you would not debate with him because you knew within that facade of that drunken state was a very learned and erudite being. So remember this when you castigate our student." And the third story is about a master who set a task for several of his students. He said, "There is a haystack, and in the middle of the haystack there is a needle. Tell me, after pondering this, how would you retrieve the needle from the haystack?" Now, after giving the students time to ponder on this, he asked them, "What would you do?" he said to the first one. The first one said, "I would take a match and I would light the haystack, and when the wind came and blew away the ashes, because of the weight of the metal of the needle, it would remain and I would be able to retrieve it." "Yes," said the master, "this is the path of renunciation, rapid, but it would be a shame to waste all that hay." And the second one was asked the same question, and he said, "Well, I would sit and I would examine each piece of hay, because there's a difference between hay and metal, and eventually I would come to the needle." "Yes," said the master, "this is indeed the Jnani path, the path of knowledge. You would learn a great deal by studying each piece of hay." But of course the students recognized that this was not the answer that the master was seeking. So they asked him, "Well, master, what should we do?" And the master said, "Well, our bodies are made of elements, and these elements are for the most part metal, and the nature of metal is to be magnetic. So if we purified ourselves and polished this and refined this, then we would have a magnet. And if we walked around that haystack, because of the nature of the needle, which is metal, it would be attracted, and from whatever position we stood, our magnet would draw the needle to it. Remember this." So hearing these three stories and stating that they should be remembered when we know that we know, and we know that we have the proper authority, what is it that each of these stories tell us that we should remember? these stories? What do they tell us? That we should remember and never forget when we're in this place of knowing that we know and knowing that we have the proper authority, the power of creation.
It takes time to get there. It takes time to get there.
Yes.
There's always more than one way to get there too. There's not just one path, there's many paths.
Yes. But we're talking about being in a place of power. Knowing that we know and knowing that we have proper authority is to recognize that we have the power of creation. What is it that we should remember in resting in that power? Knowing that here, just to put it into a context, there's 1,000 volts. 1,000 volts.
For me, it's to do with being caring, and there's other words that I can't think of, but it's a way of addressing other people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What are these three stories telling us?
Well, in each of those three stories they had 2 or 3 ways of doing things.